I have two questions about two cases.
Okay.
And the first is this Missy Woods scandal.
All right.
The charges against the former DNA analyst include accusations that she deleted data in a notorious cold case. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Tom Green.
And I'm Kim Christensen. Patricia Smith was beaten to death with a hammer in January of 1984, but it wasn't until 2018 that a DNA hit tied a suspect to her killing and the murders of 3 members of a family from Aurora. Kevin Vaughn from 9 News Investigates joins us from the newsroom. Kevin, you've been on this case for years, and now the Missy Woods connection.
Kim and Tom, a man named Alex Jukin was convicted of killing Smith and 3 members of the Bennett family. This allegation deals only with the Smith case. The question is whether it could open the door for Ewing to seek a new trial. January 1984, 2 brutal crimes, 6 days and 20 miles apart. In Lakewood, Patricia Smith beaten to death and raped. In Aurora, Bruce and Deborah Bennett and their daughter Melissa killed. Their daughter Vanessa horribly injured. All attacked with a hammer, all unsolved, until a DNA hit led to the arrest of Alex Ewing, now serving multiple life sentences. Sentences based in part on work done by DNA analyst Missy Woods at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, now facing 102 felony counts, accusing her of deleting data and other anomalies.
Jeopardizing literally dozens of very serious prosecutions is unheard of.
Scott Robinson is a 9 News legal analyst.
This is a taint on the judicial system that seems to be consistently growing larger on a day-to-day basis.
9 News Investigates has learned that among the allegations are that Woods deleted data during testing in 2009 in the Smith murder case. An internal CBI report also asserts that she did it again in 2018 while working on DNA in the case. Shortly after being convicted in both cases, Ewing's lawyers filed appeals. Those are pending. What happens next depends in a sense on what his attorneys decide to do.
2 choices for Ewing's attorneys. Ask the Court of Appeals to send the case to the trial court for an evidentiary hearing, or wait and see how the appeal turns out.
So one of the cases that she had her hands in, there were more than 1,000 over that 28 years.
Yep.
And it's a 1994 homicide case. And the guy who was convicted of the crime has been in prison now for 12 years. The only thing connecting him to this crime was a chapstick that had his DNA that placed him at the scene of the crime. Anyhow, so he's now working with a defense attorney to get the conviction overturned, but the CBI/KBI/FBI won't release the records. So they're now suing, I think, the CBI to get those records.
Yep.
And it's my understanding that if the conviction gets overturned, there can be a retrial. But how long does something like that take? I mean, what is this guy looking at?
Cases are beginning to crumble in connection with the former CBI analyst accused of manipulating data. A man in prison for a murder in 1994 says he is innocent, and he's suing. 9 News reporter Colton Chavez is along with this. And Colton, that CBI analyst, Missy Woods, she's facing more than 100 criminal charges herself, and all of her former cases are in question.
That's right. Michael Clark is currently serving a life sentence for the murder of Marty Grisham. Now, the lawsuit demands the Colorado Bureau of Investigation completes a records request that Clark's attorney says would help prove his innocence.
I went and saw him yesterday, and, we talked about what we were going to file, but we also just talked about dad stuff.
Michael Clark has watched his kids grow up from prison for 12 years.
We're 2 40-something parents, and it is horrible that the conversation I'm having with him, he's in prison and I'm coming to visit him.
In 2012,
36-year-old Michael Clark was arrested today.
A jury found Clark guilty of shooting and killing City of Boulder employee Marty Grisham outside of the front door of his Boulder apartment in 1994. A key piece of evidence, a lip balm container that was tested years later by CBI analyst Missy Woods, putting Clark at the scene of the crime.
I have been aware of Missy Woods lying under oath and writing a false report for a long time, and so is Mike.
Attorney Adam Frank filed the lawsuit against CBI after Woods turned herself in on charges of manipulating data in hundreds of criminal cases including Clark's.
Raise the question, how did this happen? How did Missy Woods do this for so long and no one noticed?
Frank thinks CBI records could answer that question.
So I asked CBI, hey, give me that paperwork for the year of tests you did around Mike's case, around Mike's testing. And they won't.
The lawsuit would force CBI to release those records.
He is in prison for life because Missy Woods lied and CBI established practices that meant no one was checking her.
Frank says the decision is now in front of the district attorney.
I just can't imagine the district attorney saying, we're going to stand behind that conviction.
Well, my understanding is that some jurisdictions have already gone back and gone to defendants and their attorneys and said, it looks like we may have screwed up. It looks like there may have been issues on your case with Missy Woods. Why don't we do a plea bargain? So they're trying to resolve some of those cases. Some of them, obviously, the state will have to retest those items. And if it's exculpatory, then they will have to turn that information over. I know because, it's an ongoing investigation, they're not going to release everything, which is, such a crock of whatever. I don't understand why, particularly when you're investigating one of your own, that you can't put the information out there. Like I said, they are going through, I know that they are going through thousands of cases that she worked on. Mm-hmm. And of these 48 that she's been charged with, some of these go back to, let's go back to 2012, I think. They did them, it looks like, in chronological order. And it looks like the farthest one back is 2016. 2016. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so that person's going to have, they have to raise the issue. They're going to have to file a motion for post-conviction relief, basically alleging that there is new evidence that recently became discovered that they would not have been reasonably known to been able to find it, right? Because this was hidden, right? This wasn't until an intern was like, doing this project. I can read it to you in a second, but doing a project and they're like, some of the stuff doesn't make sense. And, little intern doesn't know, right? Asks a question, but this doesn't seem right to me. It was so simple. Even an intern can figure it out. And then the CBI had to do something very embarrassing, right? They put Missy Woods on administrative leave, all that good stuff. But anyway, so your attorney or you're the person that this other case, they're gonna have to file it. They're gonna have to, get in front of a judge to get relief. You got to get past a couple of hurdles. Most cases, unless it's murder or some sort of life sentence type case, you only got 3 years to file your 35C from the date of the final conviction. And just for general purposes, we're talking about Colorado. So then you have to show excusable neglect, which would probably get around that hurdle in this, because how would you have been aware of this up until it was discovered? Because apparently she hid it, then nobody caught it, so to speak. Then you have to get a hearing. The judge is going to have to say, then you're going to have to determine, would it have made a difference, right? So post-conviction relief is interesting because you have to show, one, that the attorney that handled the case was ineffective, where he fell below the standard of a reasonable criminal defense attorney, right? Well, he probably didn't. He probably consulted with an expert, cross-examined on it, tried to raise red flags with it, what have you. But obviously this is new information that would not have been available. So it's more along the lines of newly discovered evidence that he could not have reasonably discovered. Of course, the prosecution would probably argue, well, his expert was really, inefficient, or, should have known this, or, you would think the prosecution would do the right thing and say, if it came down to the DNA on, a chapstick cap or something along those lines, we'd do the right thing, maybe give the guy a retrial, or, try to cut a deal and resolve the case so you don't have to put the victim through that again, right? But then a judge has to say, look, okay, whether either the attorney was ineffective or It's newly discovered evidence. And then the judge had to decide, would it have changed? Would there have been a reasonably likelihood that it would have changed the outcome of the trial? Okay. Because that's what people get hung up on. They're like, well, there's new evidence. Okay, well, what is it? Well, they're recanting. The question is, would it have changed the outcome of the trial? You read a lot of, appellate decisions, and they're like, yeah, although there was error, it was harmless in light of the overwhelming evidence of guilt against the defendant. So they'll say, yeah, it was error, but this. So the judge could look at it and say, well, although, it could be the judge that presided over the case that hears the case. And he says, I remember this case. And I remember there was this DNA evidence, but in light of everything else, it wasn't enough to warrant a new trial because it wouldn't have changed the outcome. And that's where 35Cs really get frustrating and hard, is because if you do them, one, you got to throw an attorney under the bus, and sometimes they deserve it. Right. And two, you got to be able to show that it would have, likelihood that it would have changed the outcome. And most judges say it wouldn't have made a difference. Does that answer your question?
It does. I appreciate you so much. I mean, it's confusing, and she's got 102 or 104 charges, and it's just amazing that this happened over such a long span of time, and it went unchecked.
Completely unchecked. They just, she was their rock star. Don't question Missy. Right. She's great. We're going to give her all the tough cases. And like I said, there could be more charges. Now, understand, if the prosecution knows about all these cases, they have a duty to bring them all, but they also get to charge the cases. These were mostly cases where they charged him, where she fudged the numbers, or, basically came up with the result that there was no DNA sample that could be created. And therefore, maybe the bad guy got away. I mean, the people that should really be upset about this are the victim advocates, the advocates for sexual assault victims, for any victims, right? Obviously, we want DNA to clear innocent people, but we also want it to use it to get the bad guy off the street, right? That's just good public policy. That's good science. That's good police work. But if you're fudging the numbers... In so many cases, it appears...
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
In so many cases, it appears that she's actually creating victims. I mean, she's using DNA to create victims of her.
Yeah. Yeah. And
it's crazy.
So if you don't mind, I'll read some of this. All right. This is the affidavit for the arrest warrant, and I'll kind of go through it quickly, but I think it's so interesting. It says, the foregoing offenses alleged were committed of this affiant's own personal knowledge, information gleaned from other officers, investigators, as a result of the conversations with persons named herein. All right. So they list the charges. He's a police officer, all that stuff. It says, in November of 2023, the South Dakota Division of Criminal Investigations received an official request from the Colorado Bureau of Investigations to conduct a criminal investigation into anomalies, missing data located in the work conducted by former CBI forensic laboratory scientist Yvonne Missy Woods. Missy Woods goes by Missy and will be referred to throughout the affidavit. The South Dakota special agents, Palmer and George, were assigned to the primary investigation and are certified law enforcement officers and work with the South Dakota counterpart to CBI. Anyway, so November 16th, the special agents from South Dakota, from the lab, as well as a director, Krista Fryer, conducted a telephone interview with Lisa Yoshida of CBI for the Arvada CBI laboratory. Director Yoshida explained to the investigators team that around September 2023, a CBI intern, name redacted, was at the CBI forensic lab. The project involved reviewing quantification data in vestibular swabs while reviewing data with the CBI. The scientists' workbooks noticed that specific data was missing and brought this to the attention of the CBI forensic lab management. Dr. Yoshida stated the case involving the missing data was completed by CBI scientist Missy Woods. Once they were made aware of the information, they launched an internal investigation and began reviewing all of Woods' DNA cases. Director Yoshida advised several more instances of deleted and/or altered data were located within Woods' DNA notebooks. Director Yoshida advised the majority of the deleted and/or altered data was primarily in low-level DNA samples. Furthermore, Director Yoshida explained how the DNA laboratory reports that Woods provided, which are all provided to law enforcement agencies and prosecuting attorneys' offices, were misreporting information in some of these investigative cases. To understand the deletions or alteration data, we had to gain a better understanding of how the DNA analysis works. It says identifying blood fluids, blood semen, saliva examination screening items, DNA extraction, DNA quantifications, DNA amplification, DNA detection, and interpretation. And then it goes through all of everything that is, and maybe we'll go through that in more detail at a different time. Anyway, it says all DNA samples follow these same steps. DNA testing is human specific, meaning the testing chemicals used only detect human DNA and will not react to other types of DNA. The areas of the DNA that is targeted by these chemicals are present in every person, and the number of tags counted for each person varies unless that person has an identical twin and therefore identical DNA. If the proper steps, protocols are followed for each sample where DNA is present, the DNA profile will be detected each time they are performed. And these reasons are why this type of DNA testing is used for identification. It's reliable, reproducible, and unique to individuals. Once the testing is complete, scientists prepare a laboratory report advising them their findings. Goes on, program manager Malone informed the investigative team that the intern was assigned a data mining project for the CBI forensic lab. Malone advised blank was specifically reviewing quantification data in vestibular swabs within historical sexual assault cases. Malone explained how blank simply reviewed prior CBI DNA scientist casework and copied the quantification values onto a spreadsheet for a later comparison. PM Malone advised in September 2023 she was contacted by CBI DNA technical leader Jamie Walsh regarding an issue intern blank observed while working on the data mining project. Blank located a particular sample where the male cycle threshold value was noted, but there was no male quantification value listed. PM Malone further advised that there cannot be a male cycle threshold value without a quantification value. The specific sample in question was identified as being processed by DNA analyst Missy Woods. Malone advised they contacted the manufacturer of the equipment they utilized for the testing and confirmed it is not possible to have a CT value without an associated quantification value or vice versa. PM Malone advised the specific samples missing the quantification value was processed by analyst Woods in 2018. After ruling out the possibility of an instrument quantification kit error, an examination was conducted into the DNA workbooks belonging to analyst Woods surrounding the same time frame. They explained how the CT and quantification values are results and provided directly from the instruments and copied directly into the Excel workbook. Goes on, PM Malone and their team identified multiple discrepancies within analyst Woods' DNA workbooks. Those discrepancies included reagent blanks. PM Malone explained a reagent blank is something created in all types of DNA extractions and is a similar part of their quality control process. These reagent blank is utilized to determine the amount of contamination throughout the entire DNA analysis process. The same reagent blank is used from extraction to quantification to amplification. And once DNA is extracted, it is assigned a quantification value to identify the specific amount of DNA identified. It is then amplified to obtain a DNA profile. And if contamination is identified, a scientist would have to essentially start the process all over to ensure the integrity of the entire process. Specific to reagent blanks, some of analyst Woods' cases were identified as having a CT value listed, but no quantification value identified. The quantification value is based on the CT, so there is a CT value and no quantification value. It had to be manually deleted. Somewhat similar cases were identified as having a quantification value with no CT value and blah, 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 blah. Then the altering of the reagent quantification value. There were several instances observed where analyst Woods manipulated data by lowering the quantification value to make it appear that either no DNA were present or the amount of DNA located was too minimal to be amplified. There were also instances in which Woods changed the value of the reagent blank to indicate no contamination was found. Rather than documenting and reporting the contamination, analyst Woods manipulated the workbook to appear as though no contamination was present by changing the value to 0 and adding zeros after the decimal to reduce the value and therefore conceal indications that her testing may have been contaminated. Batches of DNA run multiple times through the instrument. Raw data obtained from the instrument indicates analysts would reran entire batches of DNA. The purpose of this tactic would be to get a different result that wouldn't require troubleshooting. Analyst Wood did not provide documentation and or notification regarding the rerunning of samples, and it was discovered that values were present when these batches were first run. However, those values were manipulated, changed when the batches was processed through the instrument a second time. Sexual assault DNA samples. Analyst Woods completed the analysis. However, she deleted specific values indicating no male DNA was found within these samples, which was not the case. Deleted values were located within other cases that were processed with the same batch. When the deleted values were reinserted and analyzed, smaller amounts of male DNA were noted in several of the cases. The reports analysts would submitted to agencies and requested DNA testing reflected no male DNA found, when in fact male DNA was present. Anyway, it goes on.
I'm baffled. I guess my takeaway from all of this is that the integrity of the data, or even the integrity of the DNA, is directly proportional to the integrity of the scientist, which is, this is going to be, it already is. This is just an enormous problem.
Yeah, it's a case of garbage in, garbage out, right? The old thing. Now, here's what I think is interesting. Now, remember, they're only charged her with 102 counts, but 52 are they're actually charging with. But it says over the course of the investigation, CBI identified over 500 affected cases impacted by Yvonne Missy Woods altering electronic data on each. The validity of these cases in question due to the manipulation of data committed by analyst Woods. The Colorado Bureau investigation provided an estimate of the fiscal costs of the state of Colorado through 2024 due to the misconduct by Ms. Woods on these cases to be $11 million. The estimate is based on the time CBI employees spent addressing the misconduct, state allocated funds for retesting, and district attorney reimbursement and contract forensic services, organizational assessments. And then they go on to do that.
Wow.
The funny thing is,
I have already taken. I'm sorry.
When they interviewed Missy Woods, she really didn't have any whole lot of good explanation. I mean, that's a show in and of itself. I'm sure people don't want me to just read it to them. I can, but it's, she appeared to be coming across as less than truthful.
Right.
But like I said, this is why I don't care who it is, who's in charge, who's doing it. Question authority. You have to question authority.
I'm a big fan of that.
You have to question it. I mean, and maybe it's just the way I am. If somebody tells me to go left, I'm going to say, why? Why can't I go right? Is that better? But some people just like, oh my God, it's the government. Their scientists did it. They must be beyond reproach. They are scientists. They get up there and they sit up there with a little case file. May I please refer to my notes, please? Yes, you may. Yes, it looks like I tested this on this date and it came back as this, right? And, you hope they get it right, but that's what it is. So just be careful.
Right.
Don't take their word on everything.
So can I ask a quick question about another case in Colorado?
Sure. Real quick. And then we'll move on.
Real quick. It's about international extradition. Kimberlee Singler down in El Paso County, December of 2023. She fled to the UK. She's just lost the battle she was fighting extradition in London and just lost that battle. She's got 10 days to appeal. I'm just wondering, about how long do you think it will be before she's back in El Paso County?
Well, if she lost her battle, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on British law. I have no idea how long it would take to do that appeal. But, when you're fighting extradition, what you're really saying is you got the wrong person. I mean, it's in federal court, it's called an identity hearing, right? We arrested you in Denver, but they want you back in Texas. And, they say that you're here, and it's an identity hearing. It's usually a quick deal. And once they establish identity, it's usually rather quick. I understand internationally it gets a little difficult, but I don't know, maybe 6 months. This was a case where she killed her husband or killed the kids?
She killed the kids and tried to blame the husband by faking a burglary during a custody battle.
That's right. Yep. Custody battle, killed the kids. Yep. I remember there was something like, allegedly, right? Allegedly killed the kids, but it was like 3 kids.
Allegedly.
Small children.
Well, so it was a 9-year-old girl, a 7-year-old boy, and they're both deceased. She also had an 11-year-old daughter who survived.
That's right. I know we talked about it when it came out, and you just don't hear that much about it because they're waiting to get her back. She fled to England. When her daughter's in the hospital, right? She's fleeing to England. If that doesn't show consciousness of guilt, fighting extradition, if that doesn't show consciousness of guilt,
right?
I don't know what does.
Well, and I heard that one of the reasons they don't like to send people back to the United States if the death penalty is on the line, which obviously it's not in this case. But now it seems like the holdup was because she was facing life without parole.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like
me
Mexico.
Me either. Okay.
I mean, yeah, I don't. It's a country thing. I know of a case. It was a case, and it refreshed my memory, but I remember it quite well, where a police officer was killed. The guy fled to Mexico. They know who did it, right? But Mexico wouldn't let him bring him back if there was a death penalty. He'd killed a police officer. Normally that's a death penalty type of case. So they had to agree to not go the death penalty. And this was like early 2000s. And I remember it because it came up recently because the guy just happened to work in the restaurant that was owned by soon to be then mayor, now then governor, then Senator Hickenlooper. And I saw something on X about that, circling around. So it just depends on each country. But, the reality of it is, you should be able to, the country that gets, where the crime was committed should be able to get the person back, and you get to deal with the punishment, I just don't understand that. Like, I know when I go out of the country, I remember when we went to Singapore, Vietnam, I mean, you're just thinking, oh my gosh, nobody get near my luggage, right? I don't want anybody to put anything near it. I don't want to get in trouble or anything, because I don't want to wind up in a Thailand prison or Vietnam prison, when we did that little Asian swing years ago. If I fled, I'd be like, they're just expecting you. So, all right, we got another call. I'm going to have to let you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
A death investigation in Colorado Springs led police across the ocean. Authorities arrested Kimberlee Singler in London, who fled the country after officers say she killed her 2 children, 9-year-old Ellie Wentz and 7-year-old Aiden Wentz. Their 11-year-old sister was hurt but survived. The case against Singler is now on hold as Colorado waits for the UK to send her back.
Colorado has to do a lot of work, and luckily the feds will help them.
Denise Mauder is a professor of criminal justice at MSU. As a former district attorney, she knows the extradition process isn't a quick one.
The rules say that once she's been arrested, there are 60 days in order for them to get all the information, get over there, prove it to the judge.
She thinks Singler may not be back in the States for another 2 months. During that time, Mauder expects a detective from Colorado Springs will go to London and show a judge the evidence against her.
Here are the crimes, judge. Here's all the evidence. Here's the detailed affidavit. Here's the evidence that we can show, the pictures.
Mauder says the process would have been much more challenging if Colorado still had the death penalty.
One less thing that she can argue. Yes.
Singler does have the chance to appeal the extradition. Matter thinks winning an appeal would be much harder than Colorado getting her back.
It's very rare to appeal it, and even if she did, I'm sure that prosecutor down in Colorado Springs has put all this together.
Kelly Rinke, 9 News.
Court documents with more details about the case are sealed. They probably won't be open to the public until Singler appears in court in Colorado. Police declined to answer additional questions about the case.